Um, the large creature stares at him angrily for a sullen moment, almost like it's contemplating whether or not it wants to hurl its feces at this individual, but then it seems to decide against it and drops the toxic projectile to the ground, where it rapidly eats its way down through the foundational cobblestones that you're standing on, right down through the rock below itself and out of view, leaving nothing but a little wispy trail of smoke coming up from the hole produced. Um, by the way, the hole that it ate was probably 4 foot across, because when it dropped the stuff, it spread out across the ground quite a bit, almost like like really wet, slimy kind of sand or mud. Um, so anyway, you're all glad you didn't fucking take a face full of that. Uh,
Oh yeah.
at this, uh, the individual with the noose seems to glare at the tall creature quite sternly, but his face never really reveals much emotion. It's all just the eyes, the commanding presence of his ice gray eyes. As he's staring at this large creature, after just a few moments of this test of wills, it bows its head, and very slowly begins to ponder back over behind the vehicle. As it does so, it swipes out one massive clawed hand in an unthinking uh, kind of afterthought uh, motion, and just brushes away one of the smaller robotic guards who goes tumbling off into the crowd. Um, the juicer, who the robot or the android seemed to kind of crash into, although a very scary and powerful looking warrior, and definitely capable in his own right, he chooses to not make so much as a peep after suffering this insult, and just stands there as if nothing just happened, even though obviously some of his gear just got shattered by the impact. Um, this short individual starts looking around the crowd now, and in just a very casual way announces, "My name is Nicodemus Archleone. I am the representative of Crossroads. This is a Dimensional Merc outfit who is looking to recruit new members, and we will be participating in the trials of KeterFall. That is the reason you have all been summoned here. Everyone is to make their way, by any means that you choose, to the city-state of KeterFall, located to the northwest of our current location. There are many avenues to get to that destination, and I will leave your path to you. Several other organizations are participating in these trials: Crossroads, others including Metadyne. With this, he waves a hand over towards the people that you had been speaking to previously, Kilo, um, who actually look up at this individual and just give a very brief, um, a polite nod, if not a sincere one. You get the impression that maybe they're not very friendly towards this individual. He goes on.
A slight acknowledgement, but not like a respectful one necessarily.
Exactly. More like protocol than true
Yeah,
depth of
yeah. Like we're
feeling.
here to do our thing, but yeah.
Yeah. And then he now kind of gestures over um, towards where you see some other individuals that none of you had really noticed before. There is a woman that is holding a bottle of alcohol and just gingerly taking small sips. She seems absolutely at peace with her surroundings, and actually seems to be thoroughly enjoying this little bit of dust up and confrontation that she's been witness to. She has a huge cat-like satisfied grin on her lips and a slight flush in her cheeks that you can tell is the result of the kind of excitement that for many only true violence can bring. Um, as she looks over at the individual speaking, she does a very, very courtly kind of curtsy at him. And as she does so, uh, you now hear a kind of cackling, chattering laugh. Okay? And as you guys hear this laughter, you look up in the sky and you notice for the first time that there appears to be some kind of creature actually uh, floating about 30 feet in the air. Now, Ren, right away you understand that this seems a little out of the ordinary because as soon as you launched your drone, the security systems were all over it. But as you hear this chattering laughter, uh, uh, you see that the female that is standing over where this thing is floating in the air, she right away kind of makes a hush noise, like, psst. And at this, the chattering laughter continues. Now, as you guys look up in the air and you're looking at this creature that's laughing, okay, you see this thing. Now, it appears to be at least 12 feet long. Whatever its hide is made of appears to be rock hard, almost like rhino skin. And from the way that it's positioned in the air, you guys all realize it's not floating, it's not flying. It actually looks like it's sticking on a wall. The way that its claws are dug into something and it's hanging kind of at a weird angle. Um, at this, the individual with the noose, he says, as he's gestured at them, he says, the Hallowed are another venerated organization. Uh, and at this, you guys see that there is indeed something that creature was hanging on, as this behemoth creature appears out of thin air, apparently completely invisible to even sensors up to this point. As it stands there, you notice that it's at least 35 feet tall, over on its haunches like this. It's completely still, like a statue, until this point, at which, in order to be acknowledged, it just slightly bows its head and closes its eyes about halfway.
The thing that the other thing was on?
Correct. The other thing appears to be hanging on the left flank, kind of high up on the shoulder, kind of right behind the shoulder.
Like hanging there like a gecko is like clasped onto this thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So as it kind of gives its acknowledgement, it once again fades back into invisibility. And the chattering of the smaller creature continues, the kind of laughter and just cackling, but now it's quite subdued and kind of repressed. And at this, the noosed individual, Nicodemus, he points over at another group and he says, we also have respected representatives present from New Kenora. And at this, when he gestures over, you guys look over and you right away you notice this individual. As he floats there and whatever the contraption that he rides upon, very silently and stoically, you notice that even in this moment, he appears to be going over some kind of litany that seems pertinent to whatever his discipline is as some kind of priest, you would assume. This individual appears to be flanked by this female whose skin appears to be concealed within some kind of metallic armor, but on the exterior of that armor, a almost ferrous looking liquid, uh, uh, you would guess life form, seems to be fluidly sliding and flowing across her form. Now, you notice that at different points, almost of its own volition, it seems, this substance seems to pop a small weapon, like a claw out of one finger, or out of an elbow, a large spike will just momentarily protrude and then retract. The entire suit seems to be some kind of living weapon that itself is thirsting for combat and to prove itself in battle. Um,
Like, like Carnage.
yes, you definitely get the impression though that this thing is some kind of metal that is over some kind of like suit of armor that she's wearing. Um,
Okay.
you also notice that by the way the colors kind of scintillate and refract and reflect, it kind of looks like more like a paint job than like just any kind of organics.
Would it
Um,
be possible for my character to cast Sense Magic without causing commotion? It's a very passive spell. It's not an aggressive spell.
yeah,
I'm
you
not sure.
absolutely you could cast it.
Um, what do I need to do to cast it? Do I need to roll anything or just cast it?
In your character sheet, you should be able to go into magic, and when you hit
Mm,
cast, it's just going to use up your points.
I'll just hit cast. Okay, at the far right. Sorry, I saw two dice rolls before that are options. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So as you hit, as you complete that casting, um, you finish off the spell in your mind, kind of weaving the magic together from the immaterial. And as you push the last like bit of PPE into the weaving, um, that inner sense once again opens,
I will
and
say that they probably might see me kind of whispering to myself and doing a very simple hand gesture as I place my fist into my hand and then take my two fingers and touch my temple to cast the sense magic, where maybe a quick, slight, maybe arcane haze goes over my eyes very briefly, um, so I can view and see, I guess, the aura of things around me and see if they're displaying.
excellent. So as you do this, you start glancing around with your enhanced vision, and right away you get a splitting fucking migraine. You right away have to actually hold your hand up to your eyes because from almost every direction you're seeing what amounts to magical floodlights, beacons of energy
So
so
whatever
powerful.
a slight aura or glow, I'm getting blinded by it, basically.
They're all over the place. So right away you have to cover your eyes. You kind of put your head down, and you involuntarily kind of let out a grunt of
It's
pain
like
as you
turning on
kind
the
of
light
steel
switch to
yourself
put that night
against it.
vision goggles on.
Exactly. And you really feel it, only it's not just your physical eyes, it's almost like your spiritual senses, so it really affects you. But you don't like scream or cry out or anything, but
Yeah.
you sound like you kind of just took a shot to the gut. And as you do this, several individuals kind of look over at you and kind of notice. Some of them seem to kind of know what just happened, and a few seem to kind of get a smile going across their face, almost in wicked satisfaction of.
Wish I had a Slurpee right now so I could blame it on a brain freeze.
So, but as you're able to kind of deaden the sense just a bit, through force of will, as you start looking around, you notice incredibly powerful auras of magic coming off of the individual with the noose, coming off of the giant ape-like creature, You also notice you no longer see the Mad Monk. He's disappeared off to wherever he was going.
I
Um,
already know has magic aura, at least because I've seen him actually use. Yeah.
right. You also notice that uh, off to the side where the individuals that Nicodemus had spoke to you about the hollowed, the lady holding the bottle as well as the two creatures, all three of them, yes, all three of them are glowing pretty brightly. She's almost like a star. She's so fucking bright in front of you. And there is an extremely evil aura coming um, from the two creatures with her. Her aura is somewhat less kind of tainted and foul, but still.
But still bright, magical. Like, is it the brightest aura I'm getting from the group? Kind of. You said
Actually, strangely enough, what you notice is that the brightest aura that you're picking up seems to be coming out of the vehicle, out of the open door of the vehicle. You see a kind of light shining out from whatever passenger is still inside. That you've all it's there's only been a few other times. Exactly. There's only a few other times that you've seen anything like this, and it's been more like when you've been doing research and, actually looking for examples of incredibly potent magical auras and things like that. This is definitely beyond something you've experienced. So,
Can I also get a quick read on the girl that you showed with the flowing armor on her, and also the two tattoo gentlemen and Harmony that I met with earlier?
absolutely.
One silver on them.
Off of this individual, you right away see that he is also like a beacon, but there's something strange about his aura that looks alien and also kind of synthetic, which is strange when you look at magical power this extreme. It usually is a very natural kind of energy source.
So
His
it's
isn't.
like a natural light and an artificial light type
Exactly, exactly. She does not register as magical whatsoever. In fact, as you're looking at her, you see nothing but a black cutout where she is.
thing. Like a
Um,
light. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, also standing behind her, you're realizing now in the same group is this individual.
Oh shit.
And as he's just standing there almost like a statue, uh, you notice that his armor, you can't see the metal plates. They're all that same kind of just black silhouette. But the spaces in between that are glowing, those are shining light through because the magic is so potent, and the gem in the center of the chest is almost like a spotlight. It's shooting a straight beam of light hundreds of feet, and it's extremely, extremely bright to your
The cracks
senses.
that I'm seeing in the image are the parts that are glowing with the magic aura.
Exactly. Only the light coming through is so bright that it's like seeing bright light coming through a hallway. So, um, all right. So,
And then also the group, Harmony and the tattoo gentleman that was with her.
okay. So both Harmony and he are emitting a glow, registering as magic users, but you would guess that it's more focused into the arts of battle. Whereas instead of true spellcasters really giving you a bright light, these are more like glowing individuals.
Okay.
What you do notice about them, though, is unlike pretty much everybody else you've been looking at, those two don't have a kind of dark, kind of negative aura about them. They actually seem, you wouldn't say like they have shining, virtuous kind of auras, but they seem like they're fairly aligned with like trying to help others and not just exploit a situation when given the
Get a dark
opportunity.
aura from the vehicle's light as well, or was that just
You have no idea whatever that thing is.
that
You
one's alien, almost or alien,
it's
but
it's
like
beyond
sort of
what you've
yeah.
experienced. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Other than that, one last detail is as you look up with this enhanced sense, you look over the city before you, and you see the whole thing is basically shining like a torch of magic going up into the sky. It's
A beacon of magic, basically.
you're not seeing a ley line nexus directly right here at this location, but this is the kind of energy that you usually associate with that kind of like top level power. It's whatever kind of magical workings that are going on here or whatever's at play. It's godly in scale. So all right. So with that, uh Wotech has calmed significantly now that it looks like things are relaxing. Um, Bear, is there anything you're wanting to do as Nicodemus is continuing to just kind of, do some
Well,
short acknowledgments?
yes, as the gorilla demon walks away, Ymir pats Wotek on the head and goes, "That's what happens when you sell your soul and become a dog, eh, brother?" And pats him and kind of rubs him behind the ear. And seeing that Ren kind of waved the white flag, he just sort of growls and smirks like, "We'll see him soon, we'll see him next time." And he starts making his way over towards Ren.
Okay, and Wotech kind of puts his head down as you do that and kind of leans into it, and you hear that familiar kind of happy, satisfied kind of growl burble up from.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so as that happens, Ren, what is it you're wanting to, or I'm sorry, what is it Akama's doing right now, Dex?
So I'll go ahead and reach into my bag real quick and pull out my translator and then turn the dial down, the volume, so it's just loud enough that only me and Ymir can hear.
Okay.
And I'm gonna type into it and say, uh, "You are a wild individual."
Okay. All right, so you type that in, and we're gonna say it's starting to pick things up. So Ymir, you are able to actually hear that, and it actually translates just fine. So
Ymir, after hearing the little translation, just sort of, you see him lift up his winged helmet, exposing his face, and he sort of smiles at Akama with kind of this bearish grin, and nods his head and pats him on the shoulder. And he sort of laughs as he starts to make his way.
Yeah, I giggle along with him.
all right, all right. So let's see. So as Nicodemus continues, he names off a few other individuals, including this one, who's standing back behind him. He appears to have gotten out of
Smeagol?
he appears to have gotten out of the vehicle with Nicodemus.
Smeagol with bad herpes.
And as he
Got fucked up.
as he acknowledges this one, he just bows his head slightly to him and says, um, and to our honored guide. And he just kind of nods his head. This creature slightly nods its head back and turns and gets back into the vehicle. Um,
Was that the thing that was emulating the light from the vehicle?
no,
Okay. Because my thing is up for 2 minutes, so.
yeah, yeah. He doesn't appear to be he doesn't really appear to be magical from what your senses can tell, but you are picking up very strong aura, a powerful aura, and you would guess that he probably has some kind of really potent psionic abilities, but you're not sure. There's something very different and alien about him. Or her, whatever it is. Okay. Now at this, let's see. All right, let's fucking do it. So, Nicodemus, it sounds like he's kind of finishing up, and he says, now that you have seen some of the individuals that are representatives of the different groups that will be participating in these trials, know this: you may apply. You may apply to any of the groups that will be present. KeterFall is simply sponsoring the trials in order to get mercs to show so that we can actually recruit to our ranks. All of our organizations have agreed that this is a fair and equitable way to avoid open warfare and conflict with each other in order to recruit. He says each organization has its own reasons for wanting to bolster their ranks. Some are larger than others. Some have financial goals, while others pursue more mystical and esoteric goals. He says, we will leave it to you to find the best fit for each individual. Okay, with this, you hear a horrible screech come out of the vehicle. As this screech fucking rings in your guys' ears, you hear the voice that issued it start to peel out from within the vehicle as the occupant appears to be stepping out. At this, you all see this creature come sliding out of the interior of the vehicle almost as smoothly as liquid, as it seems to kind of flow around the corner of the open doorway. In a flash, it's upon the form of Nicodemus, and you hear it wail out as its long clawed hand swipes through the air and brutally slashes across his face. It cries out,
"Enough of your incessant prattling. Hurry up and finish. I would return to the keep."
Okay, at this, he's knocked to the floor, and you see that there's huge gouts of blood spraying out of his face, where 4 long steak knife-like claws just tore clean through flesh, bone, cartilage, everything.
Nicodemus that just got sliced?
Exactly. He's down on his hands and knees, and there's just torrents of blood pouring out from his opened face. In fact,
is this thing glowing like the inside of that I saw?
no. It does appear extremely magical in nature, though, and it is glowing very brightly.
Sure,
it is not. So at this, it spins around and seems to approach the vehicle again. And as it does, it reaches in and seems to grab a hold of something. As soon as its arm disappears into the vehicle, you see this really bright kind of blue electric flash explode out from the interior of the vehicle. And that creature's form goes flying back 5 or 6 feet, landing solidly with a thud on the hard stone of the road. As it does so, you start seeing a purplish glow overtake the kind of bright, almost white glow that you had seen before. Kilo, that's the aura that you're seeing. It's now turned kind of purplish, and it's turning deeper and deeper purple the whole time. You guys, Dex and Bear, you guys are both seeing a kind of purple light now coming out of the vehicle where you hadn't seen any before at all. And it's continually getting brighter. You all notice that Nicodemus now seems to have one hand over his face, which the bleeding seems to be slowing down quite a bit. It's now just kind of like a thin river of blood coming down, like a soda being poured out instead of a bucket. His hand seems to be literally holding his face together, and he's now come up on one knee and has his other hand off of the ground and on his knee. So he actually seems like he's getting close to standing up unbelievably. As you guys continue watching this scene unfold, you notice that a lot of the fellow mercs around you are starting to back way, way up. And as this is happening, you guys now see this object slowly begin to float out from the interior of the vehicle. Now, it looks simply like a skull. I mean, it's elaborate, it's ornate. You do see that there's some gems and carving on it, but for the most part, I mean, it's the size and shape and general dimensions of a normal skull. Whatever the fuck this thing is, though, it seems powerful as hell. Now there's...
This is the glow that I saw that's now turned to purple?
Correct.
Gotcha.
It's shining so bright that, Kilo, you have to actually put your hand over your eyes and just look through the slots of your fingers. Now, as you guys are watching, there's arcs of purple lightning arcing from this creature all over the metal frame of the vehicle and then now down onto the ground as it emerges. You see that even though there's no skin, no lips, no eyebrows, nothing to give you a sense of a facial expression, as this thing appears to be staring at that creature that it apparently just blasted, there's something about it that you can feel the hate radiating off of it. It seems like this thing would love nothing more than to eat that creature alive, bite by bite, while it screams. Now, as this is playing out, you see that creature that just got injured, it lets out a wail, and it lets out a wail, and it simply screams out the name
Eddie! Eddie!
As it does this, you hear this weird, hollow kind of voice coming from around the corner of the car. And as it does, you guys see a familiar face kind of come into view. Okay, now, as this individual comes running around, you guys recognize him as the person that guided you through the woods in the beginning, when you first came to the rally point.
The one we believe that was Tippin?
Yes. Now, as you... Pippin, yeah.
Sorry.
Correct. And as you guys see this individual, it registers that, yeah, you had known this by a different name. And you're not exactly sure what the fuck that implies. As it comes around the corner, though, right away you see it pull out this long, curved pipe. It looks almost like the size of it looks like the length of like a violin. And it's really elaborate. It's ornate. There's all kinds of filigree. There's bright silver that shines, making up piping on it. but then there's also little nodules and almost blisters of gem-like radiant colors and scintillating shades coming off of it. There's areas that are kind of glowing. You can't even tell what the fuck is glowing. It's like the material itself is. It's covered with things that look like lights and dials and all manner of different kinds of mechanisms. But essentially, you can tell that its main use is it's a pipe. It's a smoking pipe. As he produces this thing in a flash, from inside of his kind of like vest, which in and of itself is a magical trick because there's no way it should have fit inside of this vest on this slight form. But as he produces this thing, right away he puts it to his lips, and as he's running, he takes a couple of deep inhales, which right away not only lights the pipe, but seems to stoke it up to a nice, bright, hot cherry. Only instead of orange, this pipe seems to have a purplish kind of glow. And the smoke that right away starts to billow out of the tip, right away turns to a deep, almost blackish purple. As he rounds the corner of the vehicle, he seems to get the drop on whatever the skull is. And he gets right up next to it without any kind of problem other than catching a couple of really painful zaps of lightning that just randomly seem to catch him, one in the crotch and one in the forehead. But as he gets around to it, he exhales those two big puffs that he was able to take worth of smoke. And as it blows over the side of the skull and into the eye sockets and through the nose and the mouth, you see the really potent, bright flashes of lightning immediately dissipate and cease. And you see that the bright glow coming from the creature, as well as this kind of intense aura of hatred, right away start dimming and dampening down. And what you see after just a couple of seconds is that now the purple is just a slight flicker. There's just a tiny glow of purple from within the skull, and every few seconds or so, you'll just see like a little pulse where it gets just a touch brighter now. But for the most part, it looks like the skull has pretty much gone inert. At this, it kind of bobs slowly in the air a couple of times and then hangs and tilts so that it's almost looking down at an angle like it's in a stupor. At this, that creature collects itself up off of the ground, and you can now see that the hand that it was reaching for the skull with has been blown cleanly off. The stump where the hand was attached seems to have several long, thin, almost wire-like protrusions coming out, and as it holds the stump up and looks, you can see that it's literally the hand reforming, but it's in quite an unnatural and putrid fashion. Instead of flesh and bone reforming, it's almost like thin cables of metal and points and spikes of some kind of ferrous material. It's quite unsettling. It drops the stump back down, now uninterested in its own regeneration, turns to the individual that it called Eddie and just hisses like a snake or a very pissed off cat. As it does this, it reaches out angrily with its other hand and snatches the skull from the air. As it does so, it bashes it against the ground 3 times as hard as it can, actually shattering the stone and sending huge fragments as projectiles in all directions, which makes many of the mercs and surrounding individuals kind of cover their faces and protect themselves. As she holds the thing up, she kind of verbally makes a lower hiss and then a growl, followed by several loud clicking noises, as she sees that once again, as hard as she's tried, she can't seem to damage this damn thing. She takes it and throws it roughly back into the car, the vehicle, before she leaps back in herself. From inside the vehicle, you no longer see any kind of light or anything shining. and all seems calm and silent. At this, that character that she called Eddie walks over and seems to get into the vehicle as well. And you're now noticing that the individual called Nicodemus has seemed to now completely stand back up, has dropped his hand from his face, and you now see that there are just 4 white lines that are the only indication that he had even been injured. This is really difficult to believe as you look down on the floor and you see a probably 5-foot diameter pool of blood, still completely wet and fresh. Strangely enough, he doesn't appear to have any of the blood on his suit or his person anymore. Even though his suit is still dingy and dirty, as far as the injury and the blood, it's completely clean. All right. At this, he stands and obviously is quite embarrassed, but you're all picking up that there's a kind of rage and anger deep under that embarrassment. Like, this man has known what it's like to have the kind of power to lash out at somebody who disrespected him like that. As he takes several steps forward, you see him lean towards the interior of the car, and he says in a more subdued and more passive tone than he spoke with to the crowd, "My daughter, I need simply one more moment." At this, he puts his head down and bows to her slightly. He turns back toward the crowd, and he says, this is the keep. He says, "You are not welcome here." He says, "Ships will be leaving from far up the shore later on this afternoon." He says, if you wish to embark on one of the vessels, he says, follow the guides along the path of the shore. He says, you will be given free passage to the mainland. He says, anybody caught deviating from the guide's escort will be killed by the island's defenses. He says, you are surrounded by an incredibly hostile environment here. He says, I would advise each of you to use your own common sense. Realize that you've been given an incredible opportunity, and to cause trouble at the doorstep of your benefactors would be, well, less than advisable. And at this, he kind of runs his hand over his face to illustrate the claw marks that are just now starting to kind of pinken up and turn normal flesh color for him.
This was Nicodemus that said it to his daughter, speaking to the one that clawed his face, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
At this, he starts to kind of climb back into the vehicle, and you start hearing the kind of large vault-like door start engaging as it starts closing. You notice that this is going much faster than when it opens, though. Okay, as that's closing, you start seeing lots of different groups start tightening back up to where they're getting kind of together. All of those individuals that were in different groups that were being spoken to earlier all start kind of glomming together, and apparently, you know, you're getting the sense that everybody's getting ready to start traveling. What else? Okay. So with that, you see that a lot of the guards appear to be starting to kind of form up in what you would guess is going to be the front of the ranks. And a couple of them start calling out different instructions. Essentially, they're starting to tell the entire group to start loading up, preparing to travel. If anyone needs to make any preparations or uh, make waste, they say they just kind of point over uh, to a spot about 50 yards in the distance from where you guys are standing off to the west. And it's essentially just kind of like an open section that doesn't even have stone. It doesn't have road or anything like that. It's just kind of an open section of ground. And you can see huge, the size of a cow size piles of shit and large puddles of strange looking fluids and all kinds of just disgusting looking waste. But obviously, if anybody needs to use the toilet, that's where they're supposed to do it. You're not seeing any kind of vendors. You're not seeing any kind of like necessarily guides or anything. It looks like the soldiers, the different troops, are going to be the ones that actually are escorting you guys. Um, and okay, with that, what does everybody want to be doing?
I would like to look amongst the crowd for Abatuk
Okay.
and see if I'm able to find him.
Okay, as you look around, you're able to see him. He is still standing right next to the large individual that he smacked earlier. He seems like he's sticking around, at least for the moment, because he doesn't seem to be wandering off. We'll come back to where the different groups seem to be located in a minute. Is there anything you're wanting to do?
Yeah, I want to go up there and talk to him.
Okay. As you approach him, he glances over at you, and as he does so, he quickly steps between you and that large brutish creature. The large brute seems to actually be sitting, strangely enough, kind of cross-legged on the ground now, and he's picked up a rock with his free hand and is just looking at it, kind of puzzled in a kind of uncertain kind of way. And every now and then he takes the rock and he'll open his mouth extremely wide. You see he's only got about 5 teeth in there, and none of them are neighbors. And he kind of just bites down gently on the rock and looks almost like confused that it's not getting softer, and then just sits there and continues looking at it again until he reaches down and tries to kind of bite it again. Babatuk looks over at you and he kind of raises an eyebrow and he just kind of nods and just kind of waits and sees what you have to say.
As I get up close to him, I go ahead and do like a nice little bow, and I say, "Greetings. I see that you are a gentleman with mystical powers that is beyond belief, and I am very interested in a little bit more about yourself."
Okay, at this he looks uncertain. You can tell that this is probably a pretty calculating individual, and he's definitely trying to size you up and kind of get a sense of how, if you're actually sincere, if you're trying to, who knows what. But as he stands there kind of tentatively kind of looking at you and gauging you, he kind of nods and he says, "Would you learn of celestial power?"
What kind of celestial power?
Okay, he cocks his head to the side and looks at you almost kind of puzzled. And then he looks up at the sky and just points up. And then he looks back down at you.
I would love to learn some celestial power.
Okay, at this, he gets this huge frog-like grin. And you can tell that all of his teeth have been replaced with what appears to be gold inlaid with jewels, different colors and styles. But you also notice that as he does this, it's not just his teeth. his gums as well also seem to be made of the same kind of golden material. His tongue is not. And you're kind of puzzled as to how the fuck that all works. Like, what parts of his plumbing are metal and what are flesh? So
Yeah.
as he does this though, his smile somehow actually gives you a kind of reassured feeling, because even though it looks creepy because of its composition, um, the emotion behind it actually seems sincere. And whereas he seemed really violent with the fucking brutish guy earlier, at the mention of like magical discussion, he seems to brighten right up, and this is kind of more his wheelhouse that he likes talking about. So as you say this, obviously it pleases him, and he says, then you should come to the house of saints. There, I will show you the beginning of the path, at least. And at this, he steps over and he puts a comforting hand on the back of the brute's head, and he whispers a couple of just soft, gentle words to him. You don't understand what they mean, but at this, the big, glossy, kind of milky eyes of this huge creature look up at him, and they almost look. It looks like a child looking at its parent, trying to communicate maybe that it's hungry or it has to use the restroom. And at this point, Babatuk just nods at him and points over in the clearing where you guys saw the basically the waste a moment ago, and the giant toddlerish individual kind of clambers back up to his feet and goes stomping off, shaking the ground, where he quickly pulls his pants only halfway down and literally proceeds to shit all down the back of his pants and in his pants. At this, Babatuk just shakes his head. And obviously this is a problem we've had pretty consistently with this individual. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say to him? Is there anything else?
What's wrong with your friend?
At this, he just looks a little puzzled, and he says, it is the way he has always been.
Have you found him in a past life?
He looks a little confused, and he says, he be not from this place. Where he's from, they consider him a genius. And at this, he kind of chuckles real low, and just kind of nods up and down a few times.
I giggle a little bit with him.
All right, excellent.
Would you be at this House of Saints during or after the event that is happening? How would I find you?
At this, he's kind of trying to sense out the language. There's a little bit of a language barrier, so there's a little delay. But he seems to get the gist of what you're saying, and he says, contest, not for some time. He says, we have plenty of time to palaver. He says, come to the House of Saints, and let us get your bearings for this strange new land, yeah? And at this, he lets out another of those really loud, kind of goofy laughs. And as he does so, you hear the big brutish guy from way across the way let out a big barking laugh too. And as he does so, he once again shits his pants that he had just started pulling up after shaking a bunch of the shit out of him. But sometimes when we laugh, those things happen, and that's okay. So he begins to clean himself up again, and Babatuk, he looks over at you, Akama, and he says, your group, he says, keep your head down, follow us, he says. After the boat ride, we will speak more. He says, until then, eyes open, mouth closed, yeah? And he just kind of makes a kind of like a gesture of nodding while he raises both eyebrows high up, kind of like, "Are you understanding?"
I nod my head and I do a nice bow and I says, it was nice to meet you. My
Uh,
name is Akama.
okay, and at this, he looks at you, and again he looks a little surprised, and he says, "Baba Took never met an Atlantean who would brook with a monster like me." He gets this wide, wide grin and he says, "I think I like you." And at this, he waves over at his brutish friend who comes stomping over, leaving literal puddles of thick green crap behind him. And as the brute starts kind of walking up, Baba Took's smile slowly fades as he turns, and they both start walking off towards one of the front sections of guards.
I'll turn around and dash back to my party.
Okay, you're back there. You guys see that the vehicle has now turned around and is heading out. Um, let's see. The guards are starting to basically form up just in front and behind your group. You guys can now clearly tell kind of where you're going to be heading. The path forward away from the city is pretty obvious to you now. And like I said, there's just lots of rock and spire and mist and shit in front of you. Many of the individuals that you encountered earlier and that you saw in the group seem to slowly be peeling away, and a bunch of them seem to be leaving under their own power. You notice that this individual, along with his whole retinue, which included her and him, along with, now that they're moving as a group, you can now see that there were about a half dozen of these individuals that were flanking them and just kind of blending in. You guys didn't see them before, and you're not sure why, but for some reason now they just kind of have appeared, whether they were hiding in the crowd or whatever. About 6 of these are now flanking the whole group and kind of walking as an escort. As they do, they step over away from the main group about 50 yards, 60 yards. And after they do, they all get in a pretty tight, close, kind of compact ring. And as they do, the individual in the middle, he flips to about 3/4 of the way through the tome that he's holding. And as he does so, the little torches up on his shoulders, they all flare a bright blue and become almost like blow torches that are spitting gouts of flame out. And as that happens, he simply reaches down and touches what appears to be a line of text. And you hear some kind of vocalization, but it's definitely not human. But as you hear it, there's a bright flash and a huge sigil, a magical kind of framework flares to life below their feet. The pattern is just large enough to encompass each of the individuals fully. And as it flares to life, you could all see that it's made of hundreds and hundreds of arcane symbols, shapes, and geometric patterns that are shining with incredibly bright blue light as they flare up, seem to fill with energy, and the entire group disappears in a flash and a little puff of mist and smoke. You also notice that a little bit of, it almost looks like glass, like crushed glass, seems to just kind of whirlwind up for just a little bit in a little spiral shape several feet in the air, and then just dissipate on the wind, and the whole group is gone, as well as the symbol. There's no proof of their passing other than this little bit of kind of scintillating glass dust blowing on the wind now. You also notice that the large group of this individual, the large creature, and the smaller one attached to it, they all as a group just turn and start walking off in a separate direction. It's neither towards the large city structure or towards the direction you guys are going to be going. It's just kind of off to the side. They're just walking off to the east. It looks like you guys are going to be heading south, and this building is to the north of your current location. So you guys are going to be heading, south. So those individuals all start taking off,
Heading
and
south toward a port.
yes.
Okay.
And that is you guys also notice that although you don't see that mad monk guy anymore, that Harmony and her companion, the monk looking individual, they seem to have gone and retrieved what looks like a large standing, probably about 9 foot tall by 3 foot wide, what looks like an almost wrought iron kind of sarcophagus. And on the outside of this sarcophagus, there's all kinds of symbols and runes that seem to have been etched. There also appears to be several different mechanisms that are attached to it that you guys aren't sure of the purpose. But the sarcophagus is actually standing straight up, and you would guess that some of the mechanisms are actually enabling it to kind of just hover in that position, because there doesn't appear to be anything supporting it. You would guess that it's got to weigh at least 1,000 pounds, at least.